Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Real Talk. It is episode 7. And before I tell you about my guest today, let me say that if you're a 90s kid, and actually, even if you aren't, I'm sure you've vibed to the biggest iconic hit songs of the indie pop era of the 90s, whether it's Daler Mehndis Bolo Tararara, whether it is Shaan's Tanha Dil or Loveology, whether it's the Colonial Cousins Sani Dhapa, classic song, right? Or whether it's even Baba Sehgal's Thanda Thanda Pani or Dil Dhadke. I'm sure you've loved these songs and vibe to them at some point in your life. Well, my guest today, Mr. Atul Churamani, is the man behind most of these iconic hit songs and also the careers of several of the artists of that golden era. But that's just the beginning because Atul's influence doesn't stop at just the music. He's been in the industry for nearly 4 decades now, and he's a game changer in the music business itself. He's worked with some of the biggest labels from Magna Sound to Saregama, and he's even founded India's first independent publishing company, which is Turnkey Music and Publishing. So not only is he an OG in the A&R and artist development areas, he's also helped reshape the entire non-film music scene. He's helped revolutionize the digital landscape and the publishing landscape of the Indian music industry. Now, since he's a mentor for me personally, I really wanted this episode of Real Talk to feel like a fun, casual catch up where we not only dive into some cool, fun stories from the past, but where we hear from Atul himself on how the industry has evolved over the years and decades. And it's really about giving artists and music fans like you a clearer picture of how things work. And whether you're an artist or a music fan, or even someone who's considering a career in the music industry in the future, you'll probably find something useful in this conversation. So, yeah, without getting too technical, we've tried to cover topics from metadata to intellectual property, copyright, artist development, and such. And trust me, some of the stories that Atul has shared are going to leave you surprised just like they left me. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Here's Real Talk, episode 7 with Atul Churamani. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Real Talk, the first one with someone who's not an artist but supremely important human to the music industry in India. Welcome, Atul.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
Thank you for taking the time. You're a treasure trove of knowledge in terms of the music space, and I just want to dig into some important things that audiences and artists can take away from this conversation. So there's a three-pronged sort of intent I have. Audiences, you can understand how the music industry functions in a sort of brief, summarized way. Artists can take away some action points, what they can do at their end, or their teams can do. And also maybe future music industry executives, how they can get in, so to speak.
I think that's important because
Yeah,
the business is growing and, there are
exactly.
various specialized businesses coming up. So, yeah.
Exactly. So let's start with, I'm going to refer to you as the OG A&R because you were pivotal in the whole indie pop scene starting in India and behind a lot of those artists, which a lot of audiences might not know. So everyone from a Baba Sehgal to a Daler Mehndi to Shweta to, I don't know, Shaan, you worked with them all. I'd really like to know what you feel is different in the A&R space today in the industry than compared to back in the 90s, especially in the independent music space.
Yeah. So, well, at that time, it was non-film music. We were trying to create pop music, right?
Right.
And I think the fact is that we were very focused on creating pop music. And what's different is that today, the independent scene has become multi-genre.
Yes.
It's not focused on pop, right? So you've got rock, you've got metal, you've got various things.
Right.
And, back in the day, we didn't sign some acts who became big later, most notably, I think, Indian Ocean, because they were not doing pop music. Because, we were competing with film music and you had to have pop songs. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So we stayed focused on pop. And that's what we did, at least the companies I worked with, Magna Sound, Virgin, etc. So we did pop music. So what's different is that today it's become multi-genre. So it opens up a lot of more avenues to people.
Mm.
And the other thing that has happened is that technology has developed so much that what used to be a problem in the old days about people discovering songs, or let's say an album having 8 to 10 songs and only one being promoted, so 7 or 8 getting lost, that's changed.
Right.
So now, because it's a singles economy, you have individual songs coming out, and nobody really feels that. We used to have these conversations back in the day when Bidu used to say, "Why are you giving me such a hard time? I mean, you're going to do, let's say, two videos, three videos at best
Right.
on an album of 10 songs, and you're giving me such a hard time over what we know will be songs 4 to 10. So, just let's go with it." And I was like, "No." So, that's
Okay.
changed.
Right.
And it's become about each song getting its own attention.
Right.
I think that's changed, and it's all for the good.
So there are fewer album artists today just by the number of artists in the scene right now, right?
Actually depends on the artist's outlook, right?
Right.
So a lot of people do feel that it's pointless putting out an album for the same reason that I mentioned. So they say people will focus on one song, two songs. Attention spans have become shorter. However, if you look at pop stars in the West, or let's say artists in the West, all the big artists release albums. There is definitely a market for albums. And for me personally, I think if you have a favorite artist, the artist puts you in a zone. And my favorite example is actually Bob Marley. Applies to Pink Floyd, applies to Bob Dylan, applies to a lot of the older artists.
Right.
Play The Weekend, right? He's doing concept albums.
Yeah.
So when you're listening to an album by a particular artist, it takes you into a zone, and you don't want that zone disturbed. Of course, you do have the option of doing a playlist of the same artist, but the focus of the new album might be different from the focus of the last album.
Right.
I think, again, The Weeknd's new album is definitely an example.
Yeah.
Because the last album was different.
Yeah. Okay. But it also depends on stage of the artist's career. So as we get more legacy artists or older artists, that will start changing, which is already kind of happening in Indian hip hop. More of the older artists are focusing on projects.
I think, popularity determines a lot. And it really depends on what the artist wants to say, like I mentioned earlier, So some people are just happy to keep doing singles, They want to do singles, they'll do singles.
Yeah.
Some want to say more, in a creative space. So the good thing is that, today the format allows you to do, let's say, EPs. Back in the day when you had LPs, which were limited by time, then you had cassettes, which were not limited by time, then you had CDs, which were limited by time, but you always wanted to fill up, the LP, the people wanted to fill up. The cassette went from a C45 to a C60 to a C90 to a C120. So, people were doing albums of those lengths. Because technology does a lot.
Yeah, today there's no limit. But what would you say about artist management versus artist development, and how has that changed again? How is it presently?
I think in the 90s, we at labels did everything. So we were kind of artist development people, we were managers, we were doing the works. In fact, we did manage a couple of artists for shows as well. So for example, when we did Ab Ke SAAWAN with SHUBHA MUDGAL at Virgin, and then we did Man Ke Manjeere immediately after, she was getting requests for pop shows. So she said, "Listen, guys, this is not my world. Why don't you handle it?" She says, "But don't do my classical because people have grown up in that world. So it sounds very odd to people saying that, go talk to my management." She says, "But for pop shows, please handle it for us." So we were doing everything. And I think a lot of, the success of these artists was because there was nobody else. It was just the artist and us. And we would talk about development. We would talk about the sound of the albums. And I mentioned it the other day, Suchitra, Shaan, there was always a development, Baba Sehgal, the development of sound that we were trying to do to show the journey of the artist, the art, especially with Shaan, for example, Loveology was very teen and stuff like that. TANHA was really what he was, at that point, then he had reached a certain age. So you're changing the focus of, the artist so that you're not in the same place. And I think that's important. But today, the business has grown so large that you have specialists, you have managers coming in and, taking decisions, discussing stuff with the artist, which is great.
So the labels are not doing that right now. They don't have the bandwidth.
I don't know. I wouldn't say they're not doing it. They definitely must be doing it, but I don't know to what extent they're doing it.
Right. Okay. So just for the audience to understand and for the future executives of the industry, what does an A&R actually do? People are so confused.
So back in the day when we didn't have social media and social media following, there were two things that used to happen. One was that we'd get, let's say, a recording, a demo from an artist or a friend of an artist or whatever. We'd listen to it and we'd say, "Hey, wow." And I think the best example was Daler Mehndi, when Jawahar Vattar, who had worked with us, he produced Baba Sehgal's first album. And he said, he called, and I was in Delhi then, he said, "I'm sending you a cassette. Isko sun le." So I said, all right. I heard it, and it was Daler singing Gurbani on a harmonium.
Okay.
and then see what happens.
I know. Wow.
So, you just hear something and you say,
Yeah.
that's it.
There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a case like the Colonial Cousins, where Les and Hari were hanging around in Hari's studio for a jingle. They were waiting for the agency to come in, and Les started strumming on the guitar, and Hari started singing. And they said, hey, this sounds cool. So they recorded a song and came to Magna Sound, and they were great friends of Shashi's anyway.
Okay.
And we'd done Alicia's Bombay Girl with Les. And I mean, we heard it, and it was the most magical thing you could hear.
Yeah.
That's how, the cassettes, the demos, etc. happened.
Mm.
And then the best example of the other way we did it was when I went to Rang Bhavan and Shweta Shetty was performing.
Mm.
I just looked at her and I said, good Lord, how can we not sign this girl? I mean, she is just brilliant.
Yeah.
So it was tougher then. I think today a lot also is it's changed and it's sorted out by technology.
Yeah.
Because see, there are a lot of artists over there, and you have to understand from music labels. Music labels get hammered a lot, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing enough, they're not signing so and so, etc. Please understand that even back in the day and today, you have limited resources as a label. You can't sign everyone. I can't sign 150 artists every day, right? It's
Yeah.
not gonna work. So there is a limit to what you can do and what you can sign. And there are lots of talented people out there today. So the way I think that labels are approaching it is to watch an artist do his own thing for a period of time.
Mm.
And then look at the ones that are generating the numbers. And also, obviously, you have to believe in the talent. And again, go back to Justin Bieber. That's exactly what happened. Bieber was out there, he was doing his own thing on social media. And then he got picked up by...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we also told, that from 0 to 3 or 0 to 2, an artist has to do their own groundwork, and then the labels will come in and notice what they're doing and pick them up. Yeah.
Correct. And see, the labels are not a charitable organization. They're there to do business, right?
Yeah.
When they sign an act, they have to invest. I mean, we didn't have the benefit of knowing whether this artist could work or couldn't work.
Yeah.
At the same time, when I used to talk to people in the US, for example, right? And they used to say, you know what, we tell the artists go out and do shows. The day you can get, 4,000 people into a room and into a venue, we'd sign you then. So, it was a different way of approaching it, conceptually the same.
Right. Okay, so it's gut and numbers, I think, today. It's a combination.
It's always gut. I've never believed in numbers. Never.
See? Yep. It's so nice to hear that from you, because I'm the same. But at the end of the day, everyone complains ki numbers nahi hai, numbers dikhao.
So, we got 2 random mails on our Turnkey account,
info@turnkeymusic.in. Yes.
So we got 2 random mails. One was from an artist manager, and there was a link to some music. I was just blown away. I said, this is incredible. So the band is called AATMANAAM. It's really about one guy called Krishnan. It is fascinating. I mean, in some ways, there is kind of a similarity, call it, or shades of Fatumata Diawara. It is absolutely brilliant stuff. He's great. And they took a hiatus. They recorded something, released in 21. Then I think they got the manager, so he wrote to us. And so we've signed him for publishing. Okay. And the other was a rock band from Delhi called KITANU. Okay. And KITANU is a rock band with a sarod player.
Oh, lovely.
Just immediately, it just hits you in the face. How can you not sign something like that? Unfortunately, we're not a record label. Otherwise, I would be having a party now. But
but lovely. You go by gut. You just know.
I don't care. If you think there's something, there's something.
Yeah. So are you able to listen to, this is just off topic, but are you able to listen to music without your business cap on?
Oh, yeah.
You are? Okay, good. Sometimes I have that problem, just like...
No, because so when I go for a walk, for example, right? I walk for an hour and I'm only listening to stuff that has no relevance to me.
Okay, that's good.
That's how I discovered.
That's good to know.
That's how I discovered Fatumata Diawara. And when they programmed her at Lollapalooza, I think she was on early. So I didn't notice bhi. So I didn't go, and today I'm kicking myself.
That happens. No, but it's good, because then you actually sometimes I think I got into this industry because I love music and I enjoy music for what it is, like without that cap on, so that's important.
So that's the interesting thing, because when back in the day, again, when we were sitting at labels and people were coming in for jobs. So then when you move to the bigger companies, Saregama, there's a process and stuff. So the HR guy comes and asks you, so what are you looking for in a person? We're advertising for marketing, for sales, whatever. I said, and it was a standard requirement, no matter what the job was. I said, I need a guy who loves music, a guy or a girl who loves music has half a brain. Okay, we'll take care of the other half, but half a brain
Mm.
and a pair of sneakers. I said, what do you mean? So they have to be willing to run. They have to be willing to work their butts off,
Yeah.
and they have to have a certain amount of intelligence. I don't want Albert Einstein in the room. And if you don't like music, do another job.
Yeah. Nice. I like those requirements. Half a brain is minimum. I like it. Okay, so let's now get into some very important things, which is the rights of a song, because I think बहुत confusion hai. I get this asked all the time, and there are so many theories, especially in the very engaged audiences who are like, ये गाना copy हुआ है, ये वो हुआ है, और इसको वो नहीं मिलते royalties, or artists are not earning money. Lot of conversation. So let's break it down. What is publishing? What are masters' rights? What are all the ancillary rights and everything? I'll let you take the floor on this.
So in music, there are only three things that have copyright: the composition, the lyrics, and the recording.
Right. Can I say something here? Sorry. I say the composition and lyrics, I call it a layman's term with paper, the song on paper, and this is the song on audio. Does that work?
Yep. Good way to describe it, because you can't listen to the paper.
Yeah, exactly. But the paper is where it begins.
The paper where it begins.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what, it's about. So people get confused about copyright.
Yeah.
To me, it is just logic. Okay. Think of it logically. Right? What happens? How is the song created? So let's go by film, because film is easier to relate with. And we don't have this singer-songwriter problem with films, right? We get a film producer. So my favorite example again being JP Datta, and he wants to create a song, and he calls Javed Saab and Anu Malik into a room, and they sit together and create a song. Now, why are they creating the song? They're creating the song so that it gets heard and consumed in every country in the world by every human being on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay. Now think of it logically. You have one composer and one lyric writer sitting in a room who've come up with Nadiya Panchi. Now only Anu can sing it or Javed Saab can sing it. So how are you going to hear it in Japan and Germany?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first copyright, obviously, in a composition and lyric. And what's also important is to understand that there is no business entity in the room when a song is created. Okay. It is Javed Saab and Anu Malik, the composer and author, who have created the song.
Who are called the authors of the song.
So the lyric writer is the author.
Okay.
Right? So composer, author created the song.
Yeah.
And this works outside of film also, because the copyright is created by two people and it is owned by those two people. Right? The business entities come later.
Right.
So now that you have a composition and a lyric, what's the first logical thing you'll do?
You'll record it.
Logic?
Yeah.
Right. So you call Sonu and you call Alkaji and you go to a studio and you record a song which then becomes Nadiya Panchi. Okay. But what's happened is, from moving from that paper that you were talking about in that room, it is now moved to a master tape in a studio.
An audio file.
An audio file in a studio.
Yeah.
It's still not in Japan. It's still not in Germany.
Right.
So what do?
You make copies of it.
Correct. Where the word copyright actually comes from. But you make copies of it. Yeah. So the second copyright is the right to make copies. Right. So
reproduction right or mechanical rights?
The reproduction, right? Yeah. So when you reproduce the recording, what's sitting inside the recording?
The composition and the lyrics. Yeah.
Okay. So my favorite example always is that when you're eating bharta, remember there's a bangan inside it. Okay, it started with the bangan and that's why you're eating the bharta.
Right.
So you're making copies. You're making copies of the recording, and you're making copies because the composition lyrics are sitting inside. You're making copies of the composition and lyric. Okay? The second copyright is the right of reproduction.
Right.
Okay. Now, in the old days, easier to understand, you have 500,000 copies of cassettes, CDs, whatever, that are sitting in a warehouse. Now what do?
You distribute it.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got to distribute it physically into the stores in the old days.
Right.
Today, you're distributing it from your computer to various other computers, including the computers that run Spotify and Apple, etc. Right?
Right.
So the third copyright is the sale and distribution right. And again, when you're selling and distributing the recording, what's sitting inside?
The composition and lyrics.
The bangan.
The bangan, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go. So that takes care of what the consumer does and how he listens to it. Right?
Right. Yeah.
But the fact is that the song becomes popular. These days it goes viral. So it starts playing on radio, it starts playing on television, it plays in hotels, it plays in bars, it plays everywhere, and people are performing it live.
Yeah.
So the fourth right is the public performance right.
Correct.
Correct. Again, for the recording and for the underlying
for the Bengal, yes.
For the Bengal, you've got a public performance there.
Yes.
Okay? So the world should have been at peace then. But guess what happened? Mr. Subhash Ghai walks up to the copyright owner and says, you know what, I want to put this in my movie. So it was never created to be in Subhash Ghai's movie. So what is he asking for? He's asking for the right to synchronize it.
Yeah.
Which means either he's going to synchronize the recording as is, or he'll re-record it, and he'll say, the original was sung by Sonu and Alkaji. Today I want pick a name.
Arijit and
Jonita to sing it, right? Okay. Jonita, whatever. Right? So he is doing a synchronization of the work, which is the composition and lyric.
The Bengal, yes.
Into his film. So that right is called a synchronization right. Now he could use the original master also, in which case he's synchronizing the master as well as the composition and lyrics, or he could just re-record the song.
Yeah.
Now when he re-records the song, he says, I want to make some changes. In my situation, I want this lyric changed. The song is not sounding so cool, so I'm going to put a rap in the middle. Okay. So what has he done? He's changed the composition and lyrics.
He's adapted it.
It's an adaptation.
Yeah.
So he's adapted the work, creating a new section, let's say, in the composition and or the lyrics. And what's important is that the old people have to be credited, the old writers, Javed and Anu, have to be credited for their share.
Yeah.
And then a new share comes in, because everyone today is talking about splits and shares and stuff like that. That's what it means. So in the middle, if there is a rap that's been put in, there's a composition to the rap. So the new composer has to get a share. The new lyrics, so the new author has to get a share.
Right.
Okay, so that's the adaptation. And then, of course, Subhaji will make the movie in 7 languages. So you're going to translate the lyrics, because you're not going to use the Hindi lyric. You're going to do a Tamil version, a Telugu version, a Bengali version. So the translation is done. Right? And the minute you do the translation, the adaptation, you have to go back into the studio, do a new recording, and start the whole process all over again. And that is your gamut of rights.
Okay.
So on the composition and lyric side, there is the right to record, the right to reproduce, the right to sell and distribute, the public performance right, the adaptation right, and the translation right.
Right.
Okay. These 6 rights, and then of course at the end going back and doing the whole thing over again. So 7 rights. The recording side, you start with the reproduction, because you can't record a recording.
Yeah.
You can only reproduce it.
Yeah.
So number 1 right is the reproduction right. Second is the sale and distribution. And third is the public performance. And the fourth is not exactly synchronization. It's called, under our act, it's called incorporation of the original recording in a new recording. Now, the recording could be a visual, an audio visual, which is the film.
Yeah.
Or it could be a sample, which is what DJs do. They take a section of the song and they sample it.
Yeah.
Producers do that. So there are only 4 copyrights in sound recordings, and there are 6 copyrights in the underlying.
Right.
Okay, so that's the difference.
Yeah.
So this is publishing, this is recording, and separate businesses.
Yeah.
The publishing business different from the label business. In India, it's always been one due to the way
it was
market developed. No, the way the market developed historically.
Right. Okay.
So it was the recording companies that came in and they signed domestic artists and kept all the works. Whereas in the West, there is a separate publishing company and a separate recording company. So even if you're Universal, Sony, Warner, under the umbrella of Sony, Universal, and Warner, there are 2 distinct companies.
Entities, yeah.
Entities. Because publishing is different from the label business.
Yeah. And you also have a publishing company. The first independent. Yeah, the only independent publishing company. It's lovely. I want to also talk to you about what you just said about the translation and adaptation. So if we insert a rap or an extra verse, it gets complicated in terms of the artist trying to understand how do the splits thing work, and how do you advise artists to figure out the splits before it gets into any kind of issues?
Yeah. So the first thing is that do the splits before the master leaves the studio.
Very important.
Yeah, very important.
People don't do it.
They don't do it. And they leave it to the last. Yeah. After the song has been released, then it becomes a problem. Because number 1, you can't get the registrations for publishing done, right? Because the writer shares are not there.
Yeah.
And the second is that in case the song becomes a hit, then you're going to argue with each other. I did more, I did more, I did more, right?
Yeah.
So do that before the master leaves the studio, as I say.
Mm.
Figure out what you've done. And the way to do it, there are multiple ways of doing it, right?
Mm.
Today, there are, on Weekend's new album, for example, there are 13 writers on one song. So, it's difficult to fathom who did what.
Yeah.
Fact is that there are some things within the composition which could be of, let's say, inherently greater value, like the chorus of a song. Right?
Mm.
So maybe you've got a very catchy chorus, and there are three of you who are writing together.
Mm.
So you might agree that, okay, let's give the guy who wrote the chorus 50%.
Mm.
And the other 50 is split between the other two guys who are writing the verses.
Mm.
So you can either do it like that, or you can just say, listen, the song is 3 minutes long. We'll take a minute each. So 33 and 1/3. That's it. Equally done.
Mm.
So there are ways of doing it.
So it's ultimately what everyone agrees on. There's no hard and fast rules to it. It's just everyone talking it out and agreeing. So has there been any issue in the Indian space, like any lawsuit or any case that happened where people are fighting for credits?
Fighting for credits, there are, I don't know if it went to court or not, but you hear a lot of disgruntled people talking about the fact that they didn't get credited. And it's not about the credit. So I understand, because some artists will, look for that recognition, which is like, you wear a little badge on your sleeve saying that I did that. But the important thing to me is the royalty. So you've got to be credited correctly. You have to have a share because your royalty is going to come from that registration.
Yeah.
So it's very important. And there are disagreements, but like I said, they happened because it wasn't done when it should have been done.
Yeah. I was doing some research, and there was a 2009 case of Fisher versus Brooker where this guy, he played the organ in the starting of the song, and he wasn't given credits. And he took the matter to court. He was in the room. He was a sessions musician. They didn't give him credit. He didn't get royalties. And then the court ruled in his favor, saying that's an integral part of the composition that made the song a hit.
Yeah. So, let's again go back to films because that's what we understand. So if you talk to Anandji Bhai today from Kalyanji Anandji, right? I've had conversations with him, and he used to say that the music pieces were composed by Kalyanji Anandji. The musician was called, and they used to sing it to him, saying that this is what you're going to play. The composition was always 100% the composer. Okay. Now, what tends to happen is you leave 8 bars, 16 bars for an instrumentalist to come in and play. Now, if you've told him, Acha baja, you haven't told him what to play, then the composition is his. Right? So it's the way it's structured that if the composer is actually telling the guy what to play, then he's following the composition of the composer. But if you've given him a free hand, then he's doing the composition. So you have to be fair. It's just a question of fairness.
Okay. And it should be decided and sealed in the studio before the recording release.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is this conversation handled by the artists themselves or their managers or the publishing? Like, who does this?
Well, normally it should be the artists. Okay. Because, in most cases, they're friends. It won't turn into a fist fight. And it'll be easier to do.
Yeah.
But there are cases where you leave it to publishers and managers. So I gave the example the other day of a song Papan had done on Salim Sulaiman's Merchant Records. So Salim called me, and Papan had played a lovely traditional folk piece. And he said, we want to mess with this and we want to do this, that, and the other. Can you get us in touch with, I can't remember, but I think he said he wanted an African artist or something. So I spoke with Cobalt. They put me onto this girl called Niniola. And she and Papan then over the internet, they had conversations, and then she wrote a bit. She wrote something. Papan had the traditional. Papan wrote something. And when I say wrote, I mean composed and or the lyrics. And then Salim got another writer in to do the rest of the Hindi lyrics. Then he called me and he said, now what do we do about this split?
How do we do this? Yeah.
So I said, it's okay, leave it to me. So I spoke to Niniola's manager and I said, listen, this is the way it worked. So we are going to do 33% to Niniola because she's composed it. Even time-wise, it was a fair bit.
Yeah.
And then we divided between Papan and the traditional work. So we even credited the traditional work.
Yeah.
And then we got the new writer in, and the new writer got some 10% or something like that. So it didn't take time at all.
Okay. So it's important to bring someone like you into the room. This is very confusing.
It's not necessary, but I think the principle should always be fairness.
Yes.
You have to be fair. I mean, it would be so easy to nick the traditional part and give it to someone or whatever in that song. listen, you have to be fair. This is coming from a traditional space. You have to credit it.
Yeah. So who do you credit when it's folk and traditional?
So it says traditional. And there is an
Okay.
IPI number for traditional globally.
Okay. Okay, lovely. There was another case, Rolling Stones versus the Verve. So the Verve released Bittersweet Symphony, and what they did was they sampled one of the orchestral recordings of the Stones, and they'd taken permission for it, but they got sued anyway because they said कि आपने जितना लिया था उससे ज़्यादा use किया है, and then their manager also sued them saying that you didn't take permission to use the recording. So publishing ka hua, recording ka nahi hua. So I found this very interesting, and they obviously lost the case. It dragged on for years, but then they lost the case and they had to pay all of this money. So I think it's important for people who want to sample and how to go about the whole thing.
So, the way sampling normally works is that the publisher and the label will insist on listening to the new song before you clear it.
Right.
You don't pre-clear it. And we've had cases where people have said that we're using, this portion, but they've used more. So, you get clearances based on the time that the original is being used. Now, if you've exceeded that, you will have to charge more, or you'll have to pay for more if you're the user, right? So these things work like that. And I remember back in the days, the Black Eyed Peas sampled a bit of "Ae Naujawan Sab Kuch Yahan" to create "Don't Fuck My Heart."
Yeah.
So, the negotiation that we had to also recognize the fact that there was a sample in there.
Yeah.
Although Saregama did own both the recording and the publishing. That's the way it's done, So there is a composition definitely, but when you sample the original track, then the sound recording also comes into play.
So I mean, artists just have to be careful. Publishing rights भी आप clear कराओ publisher से, और sample use कर रहे हो तो label से.
So again, I go back to the point of fairness.
Yeah.
Please be transparent. Please say what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And don't be scared to do it, because it's better to be upfront than to be caught out later, because then, like you said, the lawsuits happen and it becomes messy.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Yeah. So for an artist, do you think it's advisable to just work with a publisher to make their life easier?
See, artists require many things. Okay? People who work with publishers are normally composers and authors. Right? The label side of it, the artist side of it, performer side of it, is what the label does.
Yeah.
So the first thing an artist will ask for is for some promotions to be done.
Yeah.
Now that's something a label does.
Yeah.
That's their job. You promote the artist. We are supposed to promote the composer.
Yeah.
So, even if it's the
but
same
to collect for them, to manage their sync rights, all those other rights, those 6 rights.
Yeah. So, and again, since you've mentioned sync, there's this big thing about, sync and all. Now, sync, please understand, is a very small part of the business. It's not that every song you've done, and, people say, oh, I've written this song, it's perfect for sync. Perfect for what sync?
What sync? Yeah.
I'm making a war movie. Your song is about, hey, I love you, you love me, let's go run around a tree. No, it's not written for sync.
Yeah. Nothing is written for sync. It's all situational.
Yeah, it's like in the old days, people used to come to me and say, oh, we've got a great idea for a music video. Do you have a song that fits?
Oh, God. Wow.
Yeah. So you can't engineer these things.
Yeah.
There is a situation. And in Stree 2, there's a very short section where Rajkumar Rao sings Calm Down. Right? Now that it was really short.
Okay.
But the director insisted that he wanted it.
Okay.
It's a big international song.
Yeah.
They licensed it. They paid for it, and that way, hats off to Maddox Films. They're always doing the right thing.
Nice.
So it depends. It depends on what is required. So the sync business isn't, it isn't a set thing. It's a small part of the business.
Right.
Remember, you're competing with only 120,000 songs being released every day.
Yeah.
And you have already 80 million on platforms. So, so
yeah.
It is.
Yeah. No, I think I'm asking this question too soon, because I also want to talk about how then artists understand where their monthly money is coming from, right? And who's collecting that money and all of that. So let's talk about the other side of this, which is metadata, which is very important, which is something that the artist can figure out and fix at his end every time he records a song. So we've been working on this together. I would like you to talk about where the standardization of that is and the beginning of it. How does metadata impact an artist?
Yeah. So I think the problem statement should be delivered first, which is that it's very difficult to identify songs because a lot of reports that come in, especially from platforms and radio stations and television stations, etc., into the copyright societies, is very incomplete.
Yeah.
So I have seen reports from radio which give the name of the song and maybe the name of the artist, and that's it.
Yeah.
So when you
Not
have
even the label.
you have I Love You by John Smith.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now which I Love You and which John Smith.
Yeah.
And today I remember reading that there are 28 million songs across the world that have been paid for by the users.
Mm.
The money sitting at copyright societies who don't know whom to pay.
My God, 28 million.
They don't know composer, they don't know author, they don't know label, they don't know publisher.
And this is because they haven't registered. They don't have their.
They are registered, but poor metadata
They've not entered the. Yeah.
is causing the problem.
Right.
So 3.5, 4 years ago, right? I was asked to head the music and sound sector of the Bureau of Indian Standards. And the whole thing was, what is the immediate problem that the music industry faces? So this was my first one, saying that, listen, it's about the metadata, the completeness of the metadata. So let's create a standard, and it's not complicated at all.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Create a standard, because there are ISO standards, there are global standards, numbers that are issued to different people depending on their capacities. Capacities meaning what you do.
Yeah.
So a composer and an author gets an IPI number. That's the intellectual property identifier.
Yeah. And who do you register with for this?
So we'll get to that. So
okay, sorry.
There's the IPI number,
Yeah,
which is the composer, author, and publisher's number. Okay, so you've got the composition covered.
Yeah.
Then you have the recording, which has an ISRC.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have the performer. So Mr. John Smith has an IPN number, which is how you distinguish one Mr. John Smith from the second John Smith.
Right.
It's like your Aadhaar card number.
Yeah.
And last but not least is the composition and lyric combination, which creates what is called the ISWC, the International Standard Works Code.
Right.
Most metadata today will have an ISRC. A lot of it will have an IPI. All of it does not have an IPN. Hardly any has an ISWC.
Oh, really? Hardly any.
And the question then is that if you're doing a version of, let's say, a song like Chura Liya Hai Tumne Jo Dil Ko.
Yeah.
How do you know that the composer, author, and publisher are getting paid correctly?
You don't know.
In the absence of the metadata.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore, what we decided at the the Bureau of Indian Standards, the recommendation went in saying that we need to standardize the metadata. And obviously, this is an industry issue. Yeah. And interestingly, no other country in the world had even talked about it at that time. Right? So we were the first off the block, and it took a long time. It's taken 3.5 years. And obviously, the issue was who will write up the document. So while I did go around and meet all the players, from the labels to the publishers to the platforms, etc., all of you whom said it was a great idea. And they had various points which we took into consideration and all that. But everyone agreed it was a great idea. So I said, yeah, let's go ahead.
Let's do it.
Yeah. But then the BIS needs a document written for that.
Yeah.
And I said, who's going to write the document? And they said, you. Then I got clever. And Jyoti's teacher at the University of Westminster in her business course happens to be an ex-colleague from Saregama. And she said, hey, listen, there are some Indian kids in my class. They want to talk to you and meet you and all. I said, I'll talk to them only if they write me a document. And I said, can you imagine how it look on their CV if they say, a document for the Bureau of Indian Standards? And that's exactly what Jyoti and 5 of her classmates did.
Yes.
They helped put together, and it was a very extensive document, by the way. So that 85-page document that you wrote right, has now been whittled down to 11 pages.
Oh.
Yeah. So at the same time, we did have a law firm. So Tin Nuts, Rafael Pereira, his company wrote up a shorter document. I think theirs was only about 30 odd pages.
Yeah.
And then I sat with the documents, and with the BIS, we brought it down to 11 pages. It's going through a process at the moment where the labels and the platforms, etc., are just going over it once or twice to make sure that we're not recommending something we can't implement.
Yeah, that's
but
important.
I think in the coming year, the standard will roll out, and hopefully the practice will also start. So the metadata is critical because there's going to be an explosion of songs coming.
Yes.
There'll be AI generated songs.
Oh,
half
God.
AI, half not AI. So unless we put the identifiers in place, this not being able to recognize songs problem is only going to increase. So therefore, it's very critical that we get the metadata in place. And while we're talking about it, my fantasy is the next step is to then create a standard for fingerprinting systems So that as soon as a song is uploaded into the internet, whether on through a distributor or onto a platform directly, they have a fingerprinting system which complies with a certain standard. It ticks, let's say, 4 or 5 boxes.
Yeah.
It'll immediately identify if it's genuine or it's pirated. It'll identify if it's AI generated or not AI generated, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
because you've done the hard work with the metadata, pointed to the correct metadata. So interestingly, at the Bureau of Indian Standards, they have a media and entertainment sector. So music and sound sector is only part of that. So in the larger scheme of things, there's television.
Yeah.
And a gentleman called Paritosh Saha from Star TV, Jio Star now. So individually, so I was talking about the audio part of it. He raised the audiovisual part of it. So we met the other day, and it doesn't make sense to try and create 2 standards. You'll create a standard which will take care of audio
All
and
of it. Yeah.
audiovisual. And also remember, because music also has its own visuals. The music videos are visual.
Very integral parts. Yeah.
So the thing is, it's a very slow process. We have to get inclusion by many players, etc. It is a slow process, but I'm very hopeful that, once this is done, then a lot of the issues that we face in the industry today, and the main issues being for smaller writers, composers, performers, musicians, let them get paid correctly at least.
Yeah, that's so important. So they have to each song should have an IPI, IPN, ISWC, ISRC.
Correct.
So now please tell us who registers with which organization for each.
So like I said, there are 2 parts to the business. One is the publishing, one is the sound recording.
Yeah.
The publishing bits for the societies that handle publishing are the equivalents of, we have the IPRS in India and we have the equivalents across the world, right? So you have the PRS in the UK, you have GEMA in Germany, JASRAC in Japan, etc. So it is the IPRS in India, the Indian Performing Rights Society, which registers the composition and lyrics, identifying the composer, author, and publisher.
Yeah.
Okay, so you register with them. And remember, if you're not registered with a society, you will not get an IPI, right? Without the IPI, you can't get paid because they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right? So it's critical for composers and authors to register with the society and get paid.
Yeah.
The other part is the publisher, who has a separate number.
Yeah.
The IPI chain of numbers, different for composers and different for publishers.
Right.
So if you're an independent artist self-releasing music, right, please register twice at IPRS.
Okay. As a publisher and as an author.
That's right. So that, because all societies globally are mandated to pay 50% to the composer, author, and 50% to the publisher for the performing right.
Yeah.
If you're not registered, as a publisher, that money won't come to you.
Yeah.
And in a lot of societies, mechanicals are paid 100% to the publisher. And if you're not registered as a publisher, you won't get it, right?
Yeah.
In India, it's different because in India, the law says everything is 50-50, mechanical, performing, etc.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
So even if you're not registered separately as a publisher, your author's 50% will come to you, composer 50% will come to you, but you're still losing 50.
Yeah. Why? Okay. So you have to get 2 numbers.
Because you've not registered, you're lazy, sir.
It's not that much work, guys. Just do it.
It's very simple.
Yeah. So then how does the IPI work?
Yeah. So then there is the IPI, which identifies the composer, author, and publisher.
Yeah.
And once all the elements are in place, then the work gets the ISWC.
Right.
So Churalia can be identified every time a recording is done. It can be identified and paid for. People write Churalia with Churalia, right? So if the metadata contains the ISWC, then you get paid correctly. So that takes care of the publishing part of it.
So every time you write a song, you register that, uske composition or lyrics, and get the ISWC for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Then you have the recording bit of it. And the recording, when you load it into a distribution system, right, ISRC is generated. So your distributor will do it if you're not a large company. If you're a large company, then you're a member of the IMI and you have a series and you generate your own ISRC.
Okay.
Not, and a lot of young artists are not, obviously.
Yeah.
So the distributor does it for you.
Okay.
You'll get an ISRC the minute you put it into the distribution system. And now you have another society, which is the Performer Society. Right? It's called the ISAMRA.
ISAMRA, yeah.
Indian Singers and
Musicians.
Right.
Something.
Recording. Okay. So ISAMRA issues the IPN. And remember, like the IPI, an IPI is a one-time Aadhaar number. the IPN is similar. So once you have the IPN, you don't need to keep going back to get the number for the new recording, right? The old IPN, you just keep populating the metadata with. So IPN and ISRC will take care of the recording part of it. One comes from the distributor, or if you're a big enough label, you'll generate it yourself.
Yeah.
And the IPN comes from the SAAWAN, from the Performance Society, the equivalent.
Okay. Once you have all these 4 identifiers, you are covered. You will get your royalties whenever something happens. I feel that for an independent artist, there is one artist I can think of who actually started his own publishing, company so he could self-publish and claim the publishing part of it as well.
It's not required for you to open a company to be a publisher.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You can own the publishing as an independent artist. But it's just that the numbers are separate because every copyright law states that a human being has to create the work.
Yes.
Whereas if you open a publishing company, so for example, T-Series can't compose a song.
Yeah.
T-Series can be the publisher of a song.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore, your numbers are different. You identify publishers differently from composers, authors who are human beings.
Okay. No, I think the thinking was that 50 goes to a publisher, 50 goes to authors. So just to make sure I get all the 100, I'm going to be my own publisher.
You can do it yourself. You don't have to have a company that does it.
Okay.
Once you register and you say Atul Churamani publisher, as opposed to Atul Churamani composer and author, Atul Churamani will get the money of the publisher.
Okay. So it needn't be so much.
It's not difficult.
Complex. Yeah. Okay, so I feel that any artist who wants to release music, they have to do it through a distributor anyway, so they'll get that ISRC, but they should register for the IPN. They should get the IPIs as a publisher and as an author, and whenever they make a song, they have to get that ISWC.
That's the society. So basically, when you upload music into a distribution system, you have to have the IPI and the IPN in advance. The ISRC gets generated from there. And in the old days, the ISWC used to take a long time. But CSAC, which is the confederation that governs all copyright societies, have now started iswc.org.
Okay.
But you don't need to write to isw.org. You go to IPRS. And if you tell IPRS that, listen, this is my song, this is the metadata, I want the ISWC, they can give it to you within 48 hours. So you can easily do that before you know when you're going to release the song, you know when you're going to put it into distribution. So just take 2 days before that to put it into IPRS, into the IPRS system.
Okay.
Right? And you'll get the ISWC.
I'm listening to it. I'm not even an artist, and I'm only feeling like this is too much work. So I get it. It is daunting.
It's not, but again, I keep saying that it's not DIY. It's UIY.
UIY. Yes, I heard you say this.
Understand it yourself and then get people to do the work for you.
Yes.
Because there are companies, I mean, they're doing business, distribution is done. You're happy to give distribution out to people. But then you'll sit on top of their heads and say, mera playlist nahi hai, mera ye nahi hai, mera wo nahi. Tum apna kaam karo yaar.
Music banao.
Music banao. Jaake shows karo, because you asking about the money. The money for the shows, right?
I agree. This is why I think people should come to you and Turnkey, because it takes so much stress off your mind, and so anyway, that was just something in my mind that I wanted to drive home in this conversation, because artists are constantly feeling like understanding the business is important, but how do I then execute everything I've understood? You don't have to execute it all yourself.
So while all business entities are bad people according to artists, I can also tell you that we've signed artists. It's been 7 months with one, it's been about 5 months with another. We haven't got an ounce of metadata.
What?
What are we supposed to do? We are publishers, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that we will see in terms of money normally will come from IPRS.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to register the songs. There's no metadata.
Oh, this is basic. Like mastering a song, it's basic. No, you have to get the metadata for it.
And then you'll say, I signed with the publisher, sala kuch bhi nahi hua. Dhilla nahi mila udhar se.
Oh God, guys, you have to get the metadata. It's like I've heard you say this before. Mix master nahi karoge gaane ko, you have to, right? So the same thing. It's hygiene. Yeah. Basic hygiene. Okay, so
I get it also, Jyoti. The fact is that it's little money.
Yeah.
And then you have to make the effort, but we can't read your mind. We don't know who's written what, how, what share each writer has.
Yeah.
We can't create your metadata. You have to give it to us.
Yeah.
Finish it. We'll get your ISWCs, we'll get your IPIs, IPNs, whatever if you want, right? Basic to kar do.
Yeah. Basic. So then there are a lot of misconceptions out there about streaming platforms not paying royalties or paying too less. What is the scene in India, just for the layperson to understand, streaming payouts and how they work in the Indian landscape?
The Indian landscape is no different from any other landscape because
Right. But is it enough, is what the artist always.
It's never enough. Okay. If you ask Mr. Ambani whether he has enough money, I don't think he'll say yes. So fact is that the landscape, the people who are, let's say, dominating the space in India at the moment are YouTube, there's Google, and there is Spotify,
Right.
there's Apple Music,
Yeah.
there's Amazon Music. So globally, they're operating in many countries, and they're operating exactly the same way in India. But there is obviously rate differentials because your subscription revenue, your ad rates in India are different from the ones in the US and Japan.
Yeah.
Right. But the formula remains the same.
Right.
So they're not doing anything different. What's broken is the model. And I've always said this, right? Because you are giving away music very cheap.
Yes.
Right? It's not going to work. One size fits all will not work.
Yeah.
And, I think we've seen enough now from 2007 to 2025.
Yeah.
We are seeing a dogged approach to pricing when it comes to music. Right? People don't want to shift. I was very happy to see now Spotify has gone up to $12 in some countries.
They increased in India also recently.
So no, they haven't. They're talking about doing something, but I look at the family plan, 159 rupees for 7 people. That's about $20 per person.
That's
You can't generate value for musicians, labels. If you're going to be at this low a rate. But I'm not genius, but the fact is that I don't think 1.4 billion people are going to subscribe. Why are you making $20? Right?
Yeah.
If you look at YouTube, right, people are used to going to YouTube for free.
Yes.
Okay. You go down, all the drivers and various people, etc. They'll be gathered around the phone. They're all watching YouTube.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
And remember one thing, YouTube is a Google company. When you do internet search, what search engine do most people use?
Google.
It's the best search engine in the world.
Yeah.
On top of that, on YouTube, you have user-generated content.
Yeah.
On Spotify, Apple, etc., you don't have user-generated content. So the other day, I was coming back from a concert with my wife, and it was Talat Aziz was singing. It was a Begum Akhtar thing, Padmini Kolhapuri and her sister, with Talat singing live. And it was Begum Akhtar songs. And I asked my wife, I said, the best rendition of Mere Hamnafas, Mere Hamnawa, according to me, outside of Begum Akhtar, has been our friend Ali Sethi, who did Pasuri.
Yes.
Said, really? She said, I've not heard it. So I said, yeah, I'll play it. So we were in the car. So I looked on Spotify, not there. Looked on Apple, not there. Looked on Amazon, and not there. And I said, on SAAWAN, it wasn't there. And I said, maybe I'm mistaken. I mean, did I get it wrong? Do I remember wrong? Because I'd heard it a while ago. And I said, what am I doing? I went to YouTube.
YouTube was there.
There it is, of course.
Yeah.
You have to understand that YouTube is a different kind of platform from the ones that do audios. They're specialist audio platforms, really. Now, Spotify added video to that. I think we all need to sit down. We need to have conversations about experimentation.
Yeah.
And I always say, I pay $649 for Netflix a month subscription.
Yeah.
I watch, if I'm lucky, one film in the month. I'm on Spotify 7 hours a day.
Same. Yes.
Why do you want me to pay $20 or even $119?
Yeah.
I'll happily pay you $500.
Yeah.
Right. So there will be many like me who will say, Mr. Spotify, please give me better audio quality, give me this, give me that, but cater to them. Have a different model for people who will say, no matter what you give me, I won't pay.
But that is a lot of Indian audiences because they are used to USB listening.
Fair. So then create a separate model for them. So that Atul Churamani, who's this gigantic star, you won't get his new song until it's 3 months old. And that's how music works. What did Adele do with the last album? She put out Hello. Hello was available. The album wasn't.
Right.
So there are ways, I think, but I don't know I definitely don't have an answer. But what I would encourage
Mm.
is experimentation.
Yeah.
I think the labels also see it now, because a lot of fingers were pointed at the labels. Oh, they're being very greedy. They're asking for upfront monies, etc., etc. But I think the labels also understand that if you want
Mm.
a healthy economy, a healthy
Mm.
music economy, you've got to have healthy partners.
Yeah. Yeah.
The musicians have to be healthy. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
The labels have to be healthy. The publishers have to be healthy. The platforms have to be healthy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just trying to pick each other's pockets.
Yeah.
The consumer is showing you that he's willing to pay 50,000 bucks for a Coldplay ticket,
Yeah.
and you say he's not going to pay for music.
Yeah. So
So
it's yeah, exactly.
these presuppositions that we have
Mm.
need to be tested.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wondered, why is music priced so low? It's worth so much more. And I think it also stems from, okay, the Indian audiences don't want to pay. They crib if we increase it by 20, 30 rupees a month and all of that. But then there are audiences that are willing to pay. It can't be a one size fits all, is what you're saying.
So, Jyoti, the thing is that it's the way you're oriented about intellectual property. And,
Yes.
there was a lawyers' conference in Madras where I was waxing eloquent. Suppose I went to Elon Musk
Mm.
and I said, Mr. Musk, there are 8 billion people on the planet. Hardly anyone drives a Tesla. So I'm going to start a platform where people will pay me $100 a month
Mm.
and they can drive the Tesla all month.
Mm.
And I'll pay you a percentage of that.
Mm.
You think he'll agree? Or forget about him agreeing. What do you think of the idea?
No.
Say stupid fast. Say stupid very quick.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Tell me why it's stupid.
Because then that hurts you in the long run.
Meaning?
That hurts Elon in the long run.
Why does it hurt Elon? And I'm not restricted to Elon. So once I get Elon in the room, then I'll go to Mercedes, I'll go to BMW, I'll go to everyone. I'll say, I'm starting, all your cars are available. Jyoti pays me $100, she can drive whatever car she wants.
Because you're kind of reducing the value of that product, no?
No, but forget about me. I'm asking you, why you think it won't work? Why will Mercedes say no, or why will Elon Musk say no?
Because it will take away the novelty of owning that car. Like, no,
you don't need to own it. That's what I hear. The younger generation doesn't want to own cars.
But now they want to. They're buying vinyl in record numbers.
So the answer to the question is because you perceive value in the car.
Yeah,
it's expensive. Okay. Why is it expensive? Because there's raw material in it. Music में तो raw material है नहीं. We have to pay engineers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the music engineers live on love and fresh air, right? You don't have to pay them.
No, musicians, everyone involved in making songs lives on love and fresh air.
So what I'm saying is that our orientation is that a car is expensive and music is not. Here's another way of looking at it. How many people do you know who drive a 60-year-old car? Say nobody. Say nobody.
No one. I'm thinking Parsis, but no, they don't.
Even they don't. How many people listen to 60-year-old songs? Which is the term of copyrighted song.
Countless people.
Right?
Yes.
Which is more valuable? Elon Musk. Right? Okay, so here's another one. Who's a great inventor? Elon Musk. Why? He invented the Tesla. There was a man called R.D. Burman who invented 5,000 songs.
Oh my God.
But he wasn't really much of an inventor, was he? But Elon has made one car on which there are variants. It's like saying R.D. did Churalia, and there's an acoustic version, now a lo-fi version, and then a hip-hop version, then an EDM version. But of course, what R.D. did was...
It doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh God. Yes.
Yeah, orientation.
Yeah.
Here's another one. A Picasso painting. How much does it sell for?
Millions.
Why?
Perceived value.
Right? Because you can touch it and feel it and see it. Can't do that to music. What about prints of Picasso paintings? They sell at millions.
Yeah.
What are our copies of the original going for? 20 rupees a month across 80 million songs.
That's just sad.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The perception.
Yeah.
Now, I have a song and I say, Mr. Music Label, I'm going to record a song. You pay me. Okay, they'll pay me 50,000, 2 lakhs of rupees. Let's be generous. 2 lakhs of rupees because I've got... Now I've got Carlos Santana coming and playing guitar. Okay, then 20 lakhs is okay. Perception.
Yes.
The guy who is not Carlos Santana doesn't deserve to be paid more than 5,000 bucks. Santana can get paid 20 lakhs. Right? So, to be fair, he's earned his stripes, he's become who he is, etc., etc. But the very notion that music has to be paid for and there is a cost of input.
Yeah.
is something we don't want to look at.
Yeah.
And artists don't help themselves. I'm sorry, but artists don't help themselves, because when you say, what are you paying a producer? Because every singer is not a composer, an author, producer. What are you paying? I'm trying to find, you got this guy, he charges 15,000 rupees. I'm trying to find someone cheaper. You're starting it. So don't compete.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I think we need to really, really think about this. How we perceive,
And
intellectual property.
and
Yeah.
again, so there's one perception, intellectual property. And the second is that as artists, when you choose not to do a job, you're walking away from a salary. You're walking away from a provident fund, gratuity, and pension. You're walking away from it. You're saying, "Main nahi karunga." What am I going to do? I'm going to become an artist. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to create my own. I'm going to earn by myself
Right.
on my skill.
Yeah.
You're starting your own business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you made a business plan? No. Have you organized your funding? No. How will you start a business?
People take loans to start.
Start a business?
Yeah.
Take a loan.
Yeah.
Stop going to 10,000 rupee producers. You want to stand out. Right? We just said that you have to reach a certain level before a label even talks to you. You keep doing songs for 10,000 bucks. You're doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that this song, the lyrics are better, this song, the composition is catchier. Doesn't make sense. Are you able to compete? Your competition, remember, is 120,000 new songs every day. So, these are things to think about. Everyone thinks that it's easy, get into music, this, that, and the other. The reason that people struggled is because you've come in without a business plan. And when your parents tell you, beta soch lo, gana bajana, etc., maybe they're not articulating it the way I am.
Yeah.
This is what you should think about. Right? It's a business.
Yeah.
Do you have the cash flow to keep going? How much money are you going to invest in that business before you start seeing returns? Plan it all. And have plan B.
Yeah.
Because success in this business are guaranteed.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you probably, as artists, have a shorter shelf life than a person who works in a job. Because you become senior in a job, you keep growing in your salaries.
Yeah.
Right? You get promotions, get fancier designations. With an artist, your shelf life could be short. It's restricted to the number of hits you produce. And there are always younger, more interesting artists coming down the road. So maybe your longevity is not that much. And then what's your cushion financially? Royalties.
Royalties. That's your PF, essentially.
Your PF, your gratuity, and your pension.
Yeah.
So therefore, when you sign with the publisher, please don't take 6 months to give him metadata.
Metadata, exactly. I was just saying, metadata is where it's at. Fix it. Okay, yeah, very nice. I like how you put all this for them, because it's important for them to hear it and understand.
See, everyone wants to be very circumspect with artists, very nice with artists, but I think somewhere you've got to call a spade a spade.
Right? Tough love is needed. Yeah.
Get your expectations right.
Yeah.
Don't imagine that people will come and invest in you because you have a talent. That won't happen.
Yeah. So, are there any music industry jobs right now, one or two, if you can say, that labels, organizations need more people for right now, that if a young kid right now is listening to this podcast, can then work on acquiring the skills required for those job roles?
So we mentioned it, that there's very specialized division of work today.
Right.
So even, people like us joined the business, we had no idea what we were going to do, right?
Yeah.
I started as selecting international music to be released in India.
Okay.
Got into sales, got into A&R.
Yeah.
Very fortunate. The marketing was also given to A&R. So, it's much easier to kind of do things. But today it's all been separated.
Yeah.
There are people who study data at music labels today. So the kind of jobs that have opened up are tremendous. Number one, decide what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you're good, you will be shifted internally from department to department. Other people will come and poach you. Lots will happen. But first decide what you want to do. And remember that rule. Love music.
Have half a brain and sneakers.
And a pair of sneakers.
Yes.
Because if you work hard and you love the music, chances are you will succeed. Right? So there are lots of jobs going. There are different kinds of jobs going. These days, most companies put their requirements out on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So get onto LinkedIn. If you're looking for jobs, get onto LinkedIn because that's where people advertise jobs. And in the old days, if people wanted a job, they'd call you and say, "Hey, you know that so and so, will you talk to him?" We did, and people were brought into the room at least, to interview. Today, all that has stopped. So whenever anyone asks me, "Listen, can you talk to so and so?" They just say, "Listen, tell them to apply on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If they clear the first round with HR, and then we are looking at recommendations and all, then speak to us." Because there's just, there are a lot of people applying. There are a lot of, things to do for senior people. So everyone's not in HR.
Yeah, sure. And today there's so many different verticals. There's marketing, there's A&R, there's also the data aspect of it. If you were into numbers, you can help in that.
The whole social media business.
Social media and even artist management, live industry is a whole other.
Correct. Publishing.
Publishing. Yes. Email him. Are there any artists today, maybe 2-3 names if you can give me, any artists that you've heard that you would put your money on?
If I had money.
Yes.
So, well, I went vocal with it on social media. I think Hargun Kaur is an amazing artist. I've seen her live. I've heard her sing stuff. I think she needs direction.
Okay.
So if I had a label, I would have just, brought her into a room and not let her leave until we had the right. And I think I know what she should do.
Okay.
We had a conversation about it,
nice.
But she's touring. She'll get into the room one day and we will do it. So Hargun, I was very impressed with. Like I said, these two, KITANU and AATMANAAM. Okay, so they're very interesting because they sound so different.
Yeah.
Right? But there are lots of them. And the interesting thing is when you've kind of listened to a lot of music, you're always finding something in something. So Asha Bhosle's granddaughter, Zanai, right? She's a singer. She's an actress. She's acting in movies. She's a dancer. There's something in her voice. When her father played me the music, and then of course I met her and all that. There's just something in there. And that I think really requires a seasoned composer to know what to compose for her. So she's working, she writes her own songs. She's working with Siddhant Bhosle, who's very talented, Sudesh's son. So I haven't heard the stuff that's coming out, but I hope they can kind of take advantage of that voice. And it's not that the voice sounds unique everywhere. There's that little patch it hits when you say, "Hey, wow." So there are artists like that.
Okay.
And, then it's not just about the singing. There's the personality, the performance. People have it. Maybe they just don't know how to express it. And that's where the mentoring has to happen, the management, etc., etc. But I think it would be lovely to see more mentoring happen.
Yes.
I think a lot of artists kind of struggle with that.
Yeah.
The managers are busy trying to get them gigs.
Yes.
So
they're more booking agents than like artist development.
Sure. So, and it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, the artists are calling you saying, "Listen, I've not got shows." And on the other hand, you're trying to tell them, "Don't wear a purple shirt, wear a green shirt."
Yeah. Can't wear all the caps. Sometimes you have to, but yeah.
Yeah. That's why I said, a mentor can be different from a manager. And
yes.
Not necessarily so. And I remember we met Paul McGillis, who was U2's manager. Right. And Paul was a giant of a man. We used to meet him at conferences. And when he walked into a room, everyone was dwarfed. And it was very interesting because Paul managed U2 from the time they were 18. The boys were 18.
Oh.
And he retired some years ago. And Steve Jobs had gone to Paul and said, "I have an idea. I'll do a 2-album deal with you. I'll give you $20 million, the band. And people will wake up one day with the new album on their phones." And Paul just stood up and said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Jobs. No can do." And people don't understand, why would Paul say no to something like that? $20 million, every iPhone owner in the world would be listening to the album. I mean, how much sweeter can it get?
Yeah.
So Paul retired. And then Madonna's manager, a guy called Guy Oseary, took over. And he did the deal. And the album that came out was Songs of Innocence. And U2 got so hammered for that. Invasion of Privacy. Right? It was a disaster. I mean, the album was good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the next album, it was a 2-album deal. The next album was an album called Songs of Experience.
Mm.
To me, it's one of U2's best albums.
Mm.
They never promoted it.
Oh, damn.
So that's what a manager does.
Yeah.
Knew he was protecting his boys.
Yeah.
For the money.
Mm.
You
अब
can see,
सबको ऐसा मैनेजर मिलना.
I think it's very important because,
Yeah.
for us, it was a wow moment.
Mm.
Paul saying no to Steve Jobs, it meant a lot.
Yeah. Vision requires vision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What to do with an artist.
Yeah. I have two more questions for you. One is, this is a general sort of feeling that people have nowadays, and I'd love your thoughts on it, that aajkal ka commercial pop music is very formulaic. Every song sounds like the other. Almost. Not every. But there's a very standard sort of sonic and beat and progression in the music and blah and blah. That whether it's a pop Punjabi song or a pop Hindi song, there's a bit of familiarity that comes in the sonics lately. What are your thoughts on this, and why is that happening, you think, if you think that's happening?
I honestly don't think it's a new phenomenon. I think it's always happened, right? Only you have access to so much more music today. You're
But
listening.
not in your era. All the pop artists sounded different.
Correct. So the reason for that is that a lot of people tend to say, listen, this is what's working. So there was a time when Arijit broke through with Ashiki 2, when a lot of songs started sounding exactly the same. Right?
Yes.
What happens is that ye chal raha hai. And I think social media is very responsible for something like this. Because you look at the numbers and say, oh my God, this is working, we need to do songs like this. Right? But I told you, I don't understand social media, I don't look at numbers. So to me, it never works. I think what you're trying to do, and when we did music for sure, it was more about the integrity of the artist, because the artist carries his or her music. Right? And again, just talking about Shaan. So the way he carried himself in Loveology when he was 19 or 20 or whenever we signed him was different from the way he carried himself in TANHA. Which time he was older. The music had to reflect that.
Yes.
It wasn't about kya chalega, kya nahi chalega.
Yes.
It was about Shaan, his music, his songs.
His life progression.
Suchitra similarly. With Shweta, we had Johnny Joker, which became a big hit. And then she had that earthy, rustic voice, right? We did the album, it was called the new album, which had Bekarar with Salim Sulaiman. It was very westernized. It didn't do as well as Johnny Joker. So then we went to Jawahar Buttar and we did Diwani To Diwani Hai. And, he got it. He knew what to do with the earthy sound of the voice.
Yeah.
So it was a huge success.
Yeah.
So we were looking at वो क्या चल रहा था, वो दिलेर चल गया तो दिलेर के जैसे गाने करो and all that. No, because it's about the artist.
Yeah.
But I get it. It's more difficult, and that's why I said mentoring becomes important. If I have someone to guide them, talk to them, and say, this is not going to work for you. Forget about whether it's worked for another artist. This is not you. That artist is not you.
Also, I feel like at a label's end, and this is just a friend of mine who works at a major has told me that every day they are churning out 50 to 70 songs.
And that can't be right. A label can't do that.
Or maybe in a week. Maybe I don't remember the conversation correctly. But my point is, it's a large volume of output.
Which is fine if you have the people and the resources to do that and give attention to each one, because you don't. It's not like just picking up something and putting it out there. You have. To me, every piece of music is like your child. Yes. You have to nurture it. You have to look after it.
Yeah.
You can't just put it out there and say, chal jayega. Nahi chalega, right? So that's really what labels do. So when they put out something, because they're spending money.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll just kind of put an orphan out there, right? They will definitely look after it. So if they have the resources to do many, they'll do many. If they don't have the resources, they'll do few. Everyone is in it to make money. So I don't think they'll be callous about it because they don't want to make money.
That's true. That's true. So the mentoring part I feel is important, but again, how you find a mentor and how you
have to be open to criticism. None of us like to be criticized. None of us like to be told, but
I know, because I review songs and I don't like one, I don't get good vibes.
Yes. So people don't like it. But again, I think what's important, even if you're criticizing something, and this is one thing one has tried to do, it's not about saying something is bad. It's trying to find what you think is not working and communicate it to the artist.
Yeah, constructively. Yes.
Yeah. So call it constructive criticism. But the fact is that so I'm not a musician. So even back in the day when we were doing all these songs, we'd hear the demos, we'd hear the tune, then the arrangements would follow, and then, you'd say, as a listener, this part to me in the song is dropping.
Yeah.
I can't tell Salim, listen, change the rhythm pattern or the bass.
Yeah.
I don't know enough, right?
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that this section is dropping. Can you do
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
With Baba, Dil Dhadke, his biggest hit, I just felt the song was too slow. I didn't even know whether it could be speeded up because in those days we didn't have the tech. We couldn't re-record.
Oh.
All Charles was did was he changed the tempo a little bit, and then Baba had to sound like Baba, not like a girl.
Yeah, the chipmunk.
But that's what he did. And hats off to Charles Vaz. He did that. And we were talking the other day. I mean, Suleiman was really the guy who did all the tech stuff for everyone.
Okay.
So then Charlie and Suleiman. So Charlie called Suleiman. We went to Charlie's studio that night, which was in his house. And then he tried it and he said, okay, I'll fix it tomorrow. And the next day he called Suleiman. So Suleiman was responsible in some way for, the help that he gave Charlie on that song.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So you felt it and you just, that's it.
It's a gut, right? And of course, the other thing people don't know is it was a 7-minute song. It was called Maharaja. It was not called Dil Dhadke.
What?
Yeah. And then, he performed it. They just recorded. They'd come to a dealer conference we were having. He sang it live. No one reacted. So we sat on the song. And first of all, it was the tempo. And then I just felt it was very long. So I asked Baba. And Baba wrote the song. And see how open he was. When he said, this is not working, he just took out Maharaja and threw it out. Hats off to him. That was the hook. And the hook repeated 3 times. The chord. And it was switched to Dil Dhadke.
Amazing. Being open can be such a good thing.
Right.
So since we're on the Baba Sehgal topic, can I just ask you, Ice Ice Baby, when you adapted it, what was that process like back in that day? The whole clearing of it, and did they have any issues? It was all done at your end at the label. Just a practical example for people.
We never cleared it.
You never cleared it?
We never cleared it. It's like those millions of songs people point out that R.D. Burman, Kalyan, they stole this song, Anu Malik stole that song. So I'll tell you the genesis of that. The genesis of that is in the history of the music industry. So in 1901, EMI set up in India, the first company outside of England was set up in Calcutta, which was a record label.
Yeah.
For domestic product, they signed the publishing and the master. For the international stuff, they were a record label. They just released what was released in the UK. Polydor came in 1969. They were releasing Polydor stuff over here, which was the record label. There was no publishing. 1982 CBS came in, record label, no publishing. So where was Mr. International Publisher? If you're not here, in 1901, they must have been tying messages to the legs of pigeons and sending them out, right? Now, where the hell are you going to get permission from?
Yeah.
So blame the publishers.
Right.
If you're not in the market, if you're not here, I don't even know where to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
You didn't have the internet in those days. So nothing was clear.
Okay, interesting.
Blame the publishers. Don't blame the people who are doing the music. We want to adapt the music. When we did versions of Indian songs, we got the rights because the publishers were here. But we didn't get the rights because the international guys weren't here.
They weren't here.
And in those days, 13 people didn't write songs. Can you imagine if 13 people wrote songs then? You just say, forget it.
My mind boggles at how those splits are done. But from what I know, it's a point system and etc. Let's not get into that. But yeah. Okay, lovely. So as we end, what's the top special moment from your career that made you go, wow, I love being in this industry. I'm so happy I work here.
I think every minute in the last 38 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That is so sweet.
Okay, so, moments of gratification really come with the success of the product that you've put out. And it was always that case, whether it was Baba, Daler, Colonial, whatever, right? Getting the Colonial MTV Unplugged in those days, when Unplugged was not what you guys know as Unplugged.
No,
right?
no, I know that one. Legendary.
So getting the MTV Unplugged was a huge deal. It wasn't a big deal, it was a huge deal. Gratification. And when the guy who at MTV was cursing me for sneaking over and going over his head to get the Unplugged for the Colonial Cousins, when he called me from London and he said, it's one of the most spectacular Unplugs we've had. And then he flew down to Bombay with the tapes to show them to me.
Oof. Moment hai. Amazing.
Money can't do that for you.
Yeah, I agree. So nice. 38 years.
Yep. Shows me. I had hair when I
So the industry will do to you. But you've been incredible in your run, and 38 se bhi zyada more to go. Thank you for sharing all the knowledge today. I'm going to summarize all of it in points and leave a lot of links for people in the description so they can actually go out there and, take action on the things that are in their control, especially the artists. And
I hope there's some, knowledge that they gain and, they follow some of the stuff that we've been talking about.
yeah,
Because it's important. And, like I say, I'm not a musician.
Yeah.
I really respect what people do because I can't do it. I can't compose,
Yes.
I can't write, I can't sing.
Yeah.
So I feel genuinely bad when, people have released songs, they've not worked on them long enough, hard enough, done the right things.
No.
Because I can just imagine the amount of creativity that's gone in.
Yes.
And it's to waste.
Yes.
So don't be in a rush to release your songs.
Yeah.
Release them when you think they're ready. There are no
Yeah.
riots happening outside saying your song's not coming, right? Wait, get it right. That's the mantra. Get it right.
And UIY, understand it yourself.
Understand it yourself. Don't do
Very-
it.
Yeah.
Don't do it yourself.
Okay, lovely. So I'm sure a lot of people will have a lot of questions and different topics, the different tangential things will come up. I would love to invite you back in the future when I have everyone's questions compiled.
Don't call this bugger back.
No, that's not what happened. There's so much that I want to still talk about. I have so many top points, but I will let you go today. Taken a lot of your time, but thank you so much again.
Pleasure, Jyoti. Always a pleasure. And thank you for doing that BS document. You were the star.
That is one of the biggest achievements because it taught me so much. You won't believe it. It just made me learn a lot more. And I'm very, very excited about that becoming the new standard because it'll just help so many people. Touch wood. I hope.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Yes, always. So thank you so much.
All right. See you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Atul.